The chamber was built to intimidate. That was the point. A structure so vast that even the largest species felt small inside it. A ceiling that disappeared into artificial clouds. Atmospheres divided into invisible layers, each tailored to the biology of the delegates seated below. Over 300 species gathered in ordered silence, each one representing civilizations older than Earth's recorded history. And humanity sat in the back. Section 47. New species. Minor influence. Limited relevance. That was the official classification. Ambassador Ilara Vance stood alone at the center platform, her figure projected across thousands of hovering displays. Every eye in the chamber was on her, some curious, most indifferent, a few openly amused. She had given this speech before. Different words. Same meaning. Same outcome. Ignored. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice calm, controlled, practiced. She didn't rush. She never rushed this part. Humanity once again requests immediate review of the expansion policies being carried out along our bordering systems. A pause. Measured. Intentional. We are not here to protest territory. We are here to warn you. That word shifted the room, just slightly. Not fear. Not yet. Just attention. Across the chamber, a towering insectoid delegate clicked its mandibles in what the translation system politely labeled as mild amusement. A ripple followed. Soft laughter. Disbelief. There it was. Right on time. Ilara continued anyway. For 52 standard cycles, humanity has followed every directive set by this council. We have restricted our military development. We have complied with engagement protocols. We have accepted limitations that no species in this chamber was ever required to accept during its own expansion. Her eyes moved across them. One by one. We kept our word. Another pause. Longer this time. Because what came next always sounded like arrogance to those who didn't understand. And in return, she said quietly, we ask that you understand something in return. Silence spread, not out of respect, but anticipation. They already thought they knew what she would say. They were wrong. We are not weak. There it was. A few delegates didn't even try to hide their reactions this time. A crystalline entity pulsed with visible laughter, colors shifting in sharp, mocking bursts. A reptilian warlord leaned back in his seat, completely uninterested now. The room had already decided. Primitive species. Overcompensating. Predictable. Ilara didn't flinch. She never did. We are holding back. That line landed differently. Not because they believed it, but because of how she said it. No anger. No pride. No threat. Just fact. And for a brief moment. A very brief moment. The chamber felt uncertain. Then the laughter came. Stronger. Louder. Confirmed. Dismissed. Forgotten. The insectoid delegate spoke first, its voice translated into a smooth, almost patronizing tone. Human representative, are we to believe that your species possesses some hidden strength the rest of the galaxy has somehow overlooked? More laughter. A second voice joined in. Perhaps their primitive mythology includes divine intervention. More laughter. It echoed now. Layered. Collective. Comfortable. Because it was easier to laugh than to question. Ilara let it happen. She always did. Because this part mattered. When your fleets advance, she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the noise, you do so with declarations. With formal engagement zones. With restrictions designed to make war manageable. She tilted her head slightly. Studying them. We used to do that too. That slowed them down. Just a fraction. Before we understood what war actually is. Now the chamber was quieter. Not silent. But quieter. Enough. Before we joined this council, she continued, humanity fought conflicts where there were no warning signals. No agreed boundaries. No restricted weapons. We fought wars where victory was the only condition that mattered. A few delegates shifted. Subtle. But real. We learned to stop. Her tone softened, just slightly. Not because we had to. That was the dangerous part. Because we chose to. She let that sit. Then delivered the line that always sealed her failure. And guaranteed the future. The capabilities you believe we lack. A breath. Steady. Controlled. Still exist. Silence didn't follow. Dismissal did. The reptilian warlord finally leaned forward, eyes narrowing with open irritation. If such power existed, he said, your species would not be sitting in Section 47. Agreement rippled instantly. Of course. That made sense. Power proves itself. Weakness explains itself. That was the rule of the galaxy. Ilara gave a small, almost invisible nod. She had heard this before. 17 times before. Then let this be recorded, she said, her voice carrying further now, stronger, final. Humanity has issued its warning. No drama. No raised voice. Just certainty. We are restraining ourselves. Another pause. And there is a difference between restraint and weakness. The chamber had already moved on. Delegates checking data streams. Side conversations resuming. Interest gone. Decision made. Irrelevant species. Empty warning. Routine session. Ilara stepped back from the platform. Speech concluded. Just another entry in the council archives. Just another warning no one believed. But as she turned, her gaze lingered for half a second longer than usual. Not on the council. Not on the delegates. But on the observation windows above them. Beyond the chamber. Beyond the station. Out into the quiet black of space. Where, far beyond sensor range, humanity had already begun preparing for the moment. No one here believed would come. The laughter didn't follow her out of the chamber. But the silence did. Ambassador Ilara Vance walked the long corridor of the council complex without escort, her footsteps echoing softly against polished alloy floors. The walls shifted colors as she passed, adaptive materials reacting to her presence, but she didn't notice. She had already moved past the speech. That part was routine. What came after mattered more. A soft chime echoed in her ear. Ambassador Vance, a voice said, smooth and artificial. You have an incoming priority transmission from Human Command. She didn't slow. Patch it through. The corridor dimmed slightly as a holographic interface formed beside her. Lines of encrypted data flickered into existence, then resolved into a single, secure channel. Admiral Kale Oris appeared. No uniform decorations. No ceremonial backdrop. Just a command deck behind him, dark, quiet, operational. Report, Ilara said. No greeting. No wasted time. Kale didn't hesitate. They've moved. Her steps slowed. How far? 3 systems past the agreed boundary. That wasn't unexpected. What designation? Outer colonies. Agricultural sectors. Low defense priority. Of course. They always started where resistance was weakest. Ilara's jaw tightened slightly. Protocol. Kale's expression didn't change. They followed it. A beat. Formal declaration issued. 48 hours before engagement. Civilian evacuation window granted. Approved weapon classes only. Ilara let out a quiet breath. Then the council will call it legitimate. They already have, Kale replied. Of course they had. She stopped walking. For the first time since leaving the chamber. How bad? Kale hesitated. Not long. Just enough to matter. We're going to lose it. No emotion in his voice. Just certainty. Fleet strength, she asked. Outmatched. Options. We follow conventions. A pause. And we lose clean. That word hung there. Clean. Civilized. Acceptable. Ilara closed her eyes for a brief moment. Not out of grief. Out of calculation. And the alternative? Kale didn't answer immediately. Because they both knew what that question meant. Finally. We don't have authorization. Hypothetically. Another pause. Longer this time. If we deploy restricted systems, he said carefully, the engagement ends before it begins. Her eyes opened. Casualties. Minimal. Collateral. Contained. And the cost? Cale looked directly at her now. The end of every agreement we've honored for 50 years. Silence filled the corridor again. Heavy. Real. Ilara nodded once. Then we follow protocol. Cale didn't argue. He never did. Understood. The transmission flickered slightly, but didn't end. There was something else. Say it, she said. Cale exhaled slowly. They're watching this one closely. Who? All of them. That made sense. They think this will prove something. Ilara's expression didn't change. It will. Cale studied her for a moment. Then, there's one more thing. Go. The Zarithi commander leading the fleet. A slight shift in tone. He's requested that the engagement be broadcast. Ilara's eyes hardened. Public demonstration. Yes. Of what? Cale didn't need to answer. Of what happens, he said, when humans fight by the rules. There it was. Not just a battle. A message. Ilara let out a slow breath. Approve the broadcast. Cale blinked once. Ambassador. Approve it. Her voice was firm now. Unmoving. If they want to watch, she said, let them watch. Cale held her gaze for a second longer. Then nodded. Understood. The transmission cut. The corridor lights returned to normal. And Ilara Vance stood alone again. 48 hours later. The galaxy tuned in. Not out of concern. Not out of fear. But curiosity. A minor engagement. A controlled conflict. A demonstration of proper warfare. Across hundreds of systems, massive viewing chambers filled with observers. Delegates gathered in clusters, their translators whispering commentary in real time. Military analysts prepared reports before the first shot had even been fired. The outcome was already assumed. The only question was how quickly it would happen. Above the colony world of Ardent 3, two fleets drifted into position. Perfect formation. Perfect spacing. Perfect visibility. The Zarithi fleet gleamed under the system's star, its ships arranged in elegant, symmetrical lines, each one positioned according to centuries-old doctrines refined under the conventions. Across from them, human vessels. Fewer. Smaller. Quieter. Commander Elias Rook stood on the bridge of the lead human cruiser, staring out at the enemy formation. They're making it theatrical, his tactical officer muttered. They always do, Rook replied. Broadcast channels are live across 212 systems, another officer added. We are trending. A few quiet chuckles. Dry. Humor without amusement. Rook didn't smile. Evacuation status. Complete. Civilian transports clear the system. Good. He looked back at the display. The Zarithi fleet hadn't moved. They were waiting. Of course they were. A formal signal pulsed across all channels. Engagement window commencing. Rook exhaled slowly. Begin. The battle started exactly as the Council intended. Energy weapons lit the void, bright, visible, avoidable. Ships maneuvered within designated engagement zones, exchanging fire at ranges that allowed for reaction, strategy, survival. Damage reports came in. Shields failing. Hull breaches. Controlled losses. Predictable patterns. It looked beautiful. That was the problem. Port shields at 60%. Return fire. Confirmed hits. Minimal effect. Rook watched it unfold. He had seen simulations like this his entire career. He had studied this kind of war. He had trained for it. And he hated every second of it. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, we're being outmaneuvered. I know. They're anticipating every move. I know. Another hit. The ship trembled. Starboard batteries offline. Damage control en route. Across the system, human ships began falling back. Not breaking. Not collapsing. Just losing. Exactly as expected. Exactly as designed. On 100 worlds, observers watched with quiet satisfaction. See. Nothing special. Nothing hidden. Just another young species trying to keep up. Commander. Rook turned. His executive officer hesitated. Then, we still have access. Rook didn't need clarification. He already knew what she meant. The vault is ready. Silence stretched across the bridge. Every officer heard it. Every officer understood. We can end this, she said quietly. No broadcast delay. No countermeasure window. We hit them before they even know we fired. Rook looked back at the stars. At the enemy fleet. At the neat formations. The clean lines. The predictable patterns. This isn't war, he muttered. No one responded. Because they all agreed. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then opened them again. Negative. A beat. We follow protocol. The words felt heavier this time. Harder. Real. His officer nodded slowly. Understood. Another impact. Stronger. More systems failing. Commander, the tactical officer said, voice tight now, we can't hold this line. I know. Then give the order. Rook's gaze never left the battlefield. No. The silence that followed was different. Not agreement. Not acceptance. Something closer to frustration. Or disbelief. Minutes passed. Then. The inevitable. Primary shields collapsing. Multiple hull breaches. Casualties reported. Rook inhaled. Slow. Steady. Signal retreat. The bridge froze for half a second. Then. Acknowledged. Fleet-wide withdrawal initiated. Human ships began to pull back. One by one. Damaged. Outmatched. Defeated. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. Analysis. Commentary. Confirmation. The humans had fought. The humans had lost. Nothing more. Nothing less. In the observation chambers of the Galactic Council, the same delegates who had laughed earlier watched the conclusion with quiet satisfaction. The crystalline being pulsed softly. Competent, it remarked. But unremarkable. The reptilian warlord gave a low, rumbling sound of agreement. They fight well, within their limits. And that was the verdict. Filed. Accepted. Final. Far away. On a human command station hidden beyond standard sensor range. Admiral Cale Oris stood in silence as the final reports came in. Ardent 3 has fallen. He nodded once. Casualties. Within projected limits. Enemy losses. Minimal. Of course. Cale looked at the secondary display. A locked system. Encrypted. Restricted. Waiting. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Admiral, an officer said quietly. They're broadcasting celebrations. Cale's expression didn't change. Let them. He turned away from the main screen. His voice dropped, lower, colder. They think they've proven something. No one responded. Because everyone knew what he was going to say next. They have. A pause. Then. They've proven exactly what happens. His gaze shifted toward the locked system. When we fight with one hand tied behind our back. The room went still. Completely still. And somewhere. Far beyond what the galaxy could see. Something old. Something patient. Remained locked away. Waiting. The celebrations didn't last long. They never do. 3 hours after the fall of Ardent 3. The broadcast changed. At first, no one noticed. Most systems had already begun switching to analysis, replaying tactical errors, discussing fleet positioning, confirming what they already believed. Humans fought well. But they were nothing special. Then, a priority signal forced its way onto every active channel. Unscheduled. Unauthorized. Unignorable. The source tag flashed across screens in over 300 languages. Zarithi command, live transmission. The image stabilized. A battlefield. Not in space. On the surface. The colony. Ardent 3. Smoke drifted through shattered structures. Fires burned in controlled lines where energy weapons had carved precise, regulated damage. Nothing excessive. Nothing uncontrolled. Clean war. Civilized war. Exactly as the Council intended. At the center of the frame. 6 figures. Human. On their knees. Restrained. Alive. A murmur spread across the galaxy. Confusion first. Then discomfort. Then understanding. The Zarithi commander stepped into view. Tall. Armored. Composed. His voice translated instantly across every listening system. Let this serve as clarification. No anger. No excitement. Just cold certainty. These individuals were captured during the engagement at Ardent 3. The camera shifted slightly. Closer now. The humans didn't speak. Didn't beg. Didn't struggle. They already knew. Across the Galactic Council chamber. Delegates leaned forward. This wasn't standard. This wasn't right. According to the warfare conventions, the commander continued, they are to be processed, documented, and returned through proper exchange channels. A pause. Just long enough. But humanity has made repeated claims. The camera zoomed further. Faces now visible. Bruised. Blooded. Unbroken. They claim they are holding back. A flicker of something passed through the commander's tone. Not anger. Something closer to contempt. They claim there is a difference between restraint and weakness. The chamber grew quieter. Not silent. But close. So we will test that claim. On Earth. In command centers. In hidden stations. Every human watching felt it at the same time. That shift. That line being crossed. The commander turned slightly. A gesture. Precise. Deliberate. Observe carefully, he said. Let the galaxy see the truth. One of the human soldiers lifted his head. Just slightly. Enough for the camera to catch his face. Calm. Not fearless. Not defiant. Just steady. He looked directly into the lens. Into the galaxy. And for a brief moment. It felt like he wasn't looking at them. He was looking past them. At something else entirely. Any last statement? The commander asked. Formal. Mocking. Unnecessary. The soldier didn't hesitate. We warned you. That was all. No speech. No anger. Just the same words. Repeated again. And that's when something changed. Not on the battlefield. Not in the broadcast. But in the silence that followed. The commander gave a small, dismissive motion. Proceed. 6 shots. Clean. Efficient. Controlled. Exactly within acceptable weapon parameters. 6 bodies fell. And just like that. It was over. For a few seconds. No one spoke. Not in the council. Not in the observation chambers. Not across the networks. Because something felt wrong. Not illegal. Not technically. But wrong. Then the reactions came. Fragmented. Uneven. Confused. They followed engagement rules. They issued formal declaration. The execution was unconventional, but not explicitly. They made a statement. A necessary demonstration. Rationalization spread faster than outrage. Because outrage required admitting something uncomfortable. And most species weren't ready for that. But not all. In the upper tiers of the council chamber. A presence that had remained silent for centuries. Shifted. The Archon representative. Ancient. Observing. Waiting. Watching. Its energy form flickered, subtle, but noticeable. For the first time in a long time. It was paying attention. On Earth. Ambassador Ilara Vance stood in absolute silence as the transmission replayed in front of her. No one in the room spoke. No one moved. Because everyone understood what had just happened. This wasn't a battlefield decision. This wasn't chaos. This was deliberate. A message. They wanted this, someone whispered. Ilara didn't respond. Her hands were clenched tightly at her sides. Not shaking. Not trembling. Just, still. Too still. They broke it, another voice said quietly. That one mattered. Because it was true. Not in wording. Not in technicality. But in spirit. They had broken it. Ilara stepped forward. Slowly. Her eyes never leaving the screen. Get me Geneva. No hesitation this time. No delay. The room snapped into motion instantly. Secure channels opened. Encryption layers activated. Within seconds. The connection was live. The Human Systems Alliance convened faster than it ever had before. Leaders. Commanders. Advisors. All present. All watching the same footage. No introductions. No formalities. Just silence. Heavy. Final. President Adrian Solis spoke first. Confirm violation. A military advisor responded immediately. Within technical limits. A pause. Then. Outside acceptable conduct. That was the truth. The only truth that mattered. Solis nodded once. Then we proceed. No debate. No delay. Because this moment had been prepared for. A vote was called. Not out of uncertainty. Out of necessity. Protocol demanded it. The result came back in less than 4 minutes. 92% in favor. The room didn't react. No relief. No celebration. Because they all knew what that number meant. Solis stood. His voice was calm. Controlled. But something beneath it had changed. Something colder. For 50 years, he said, humanity has complied. No one interrupted. We followed their rules. A beat. We accepted their limits. Another. We believed restraint would be understood. Silence deepened. Then. That belief was incorrect. Ilara closed her eyes briefly. Just once. Then opened them again. Different now. Resolved. Solis continued. Effective immediately. Every system in the room locked onto his voice. Humanity is no longer bound by galactic warfare conventions. No one reacted. Because there was nothing to react to. It wasn't a decision. It was a turning point. We will respond, he said. Using full operational capability. A final pause. Then the line that would echo across the galaxy. The same way Ilara's had. But this time, without misunderstanding. They were warned. The transmission ended. Across human space. Something changed. Not visibly. Not immediately. But systems long dormant. Activated. Locks disengaged. Vaults opened. Protocols updated. Restrictions lifted. And far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council. Deep in the dark between stars. A fleet that had never officially existed. Received a single command. Authorization confirmed. For the first time in 50 years. Humanity stopped holding back. For 12 hours. Nothing happened. The galaxy waited. Not nervously. Not seriously. Just watching. Because threats were common. Declarations were routine. Even dramatic ones. And humanity. Humanity had just lost. Across the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called, not out of fear, but protocol. Delegates spoke over one another, arguing definitions, debating jurisdiction, analyzing language. They cannot simply abandon the conventions. They already have. Then enforcement must be. By whom? Silence followed that question. Because no one had a good answer. On Zarithi-controlled channels, the tone was different. Confident. Dismissive. Triumphant. They posture, Commander Virex stated during a widely broadcast address, standing where the execution had taken place just hours earlier. They speak of power they have never demonstrated. Behind him, The ruins of Ardent 3 burned in neat, controlled patterns. They claim restraint, yet we see only limitation. A pause. Calculated. We welcome their response. That line spread quickly. Clipped. Shared. Repeated. Mocked. And still. Nothing happened. 12 hours. 18. 24. By the second day, analysts began publishing conclusions. Humanity lacks escalation capability. Their response was rhetorical, not strategic. Their compliance history suggests internal division. Even some within the council began to relax. Perhaps this would pass. Perhaps humanity would adjust, adapt, accept. Then, at exactly 26 hours, 14 minutes, 3 seconds after the declaration, the first target disappeared. No warning. No signal. No flare. The Zarithi military command station in the Velka system stopped existing. One moment. It was there. A structure housing over 40,000 personnel. Shielded. Armed. Integrated into a defense grid considered impenetrable under conventional engagement. The next. It was a cloud of expanding debris. Silent. Instant. Impossible. It took 6 minutes for confirmation to spread. Because no one understood what they were seeing. There was no energy spike. No weapon signature. No incoming object. Recalculate. I already did, there's nothing there. Then came the second strike. And the third. And the fourth. 17 installations across 8 systems. Gone. Within the next 2 hours. Panic didn't happen immediately. Confusion did. Because confusion comes first. What weapon is this? There is no detectable launch. No trajectory. No warning. That's not possible. But it was. Deep in uncharted space. Far beyond standard sensor range. A human vessel drifted in complete silence. No emissions. No signatures. Invisible. Inside. Admiral Cale Oris stood before a tactical display. Red markers filled the projection. Each one a target. Each one already calculated. Each one already decided. Impact confirmations, he asked. 17 successful, his officer replied. No detection prior to contact. Enemy response time, 0. Cale nodded once. Next sequence. Prepared. A pause. Then. Proceed. Hundreds of light years away. Another station vanished. The weapon was simple. Terrifyingly simple. A dense cylinder of reinforced alloy. No energy core. No propulsion signature. No detectable emissions. Accelerated to relativistic speeds from distances so vast that by the time sensors registered anything, the target had already been destroyed. Kinetic impact. Pure physics. No defense. No interception. No warning. Across the galaxy, the realization began to spread. Slow at first. Then faster. Then all at once. They're striking from outside sensor range. No, beyond that. They're firing from distances we can't even monitor. This violates. This bypasses everything. The council chamber descended into chaos. Voices overlapping. Systems lighting up. Delegates demanding answers that didn't exist. This is exactly why the conventions exist. They are attacking without declaration. They are using prohibited. They are winning. That word cut through everything. Winning. The Zarithi fleet mobilized immediately. Orders sent. Formations adjusted. Countermeasures deployed. None of it mattered. Because you cannot defend against something you cannot detect. You cannot counter something that has already happened. You cannot fight what you cannot see. Within 24 hours, the Zarithi military lost 32% of its command infrastructure, 41% of its coordination networks, 19% of its active fleet support systems, and humanity had committed less than 3% of its total military capacity. The broadcasts changed. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the mockery. Replaced by something unfamiliar. Fear. This is barbaric. They strike without honor. They give no chance to surrender. The same voices. The same species. The same chamber. Now outraged. Now shocked. Now desperate. On Earth, President Adrian Solis appeared once more. Not in a political chamber. Not in a ceremonial hall. But in a command center. Behind him. Live tactical feeds. Red targets turning green. One by one. You call this barbaric, he said calmly. No anger. No emotion. Just clarity. You call this dishonorable. A slight tilt of his head. We call this war. The screen shifted. Showing the execution. The 6 soldiers. The moment everything changed. That was barbaric, Solis continued. Executing prisoners under the illusion of law. The display shifted again. Now. Human strikes. Precise. Targeted. Military installations only. No civilian damage. No unnecessary destruction. This, he said, is efficiency. He stepped closer to the camera. Closer than before. For 50 years, we fought your way. A pause. You saw weakness. His eyes hardened. This. Another pause. He let it land. Is us fighting ours? The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy. No one laughed this time. Because now. They understood. The words from the council chamber. From the speech they had dismissed. Echoed back through every system. We are not weak. We are holding back. And for the first time. The galaxy realized. That had never been a warning. It had been a promise. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It never does. At first. The Zarithi command believed it was a disruption. A temporary loss of infrastructure. Something that could be stabilized. Recovered. Managed. It wasn't. Because while the galaxy focused on what had already been destroyed, humanity had already moved on. To what came next. Cyber operations are live. The report came quietly across Admiral Kale Oris's bridge. No alarms. No urgency. Just confirmation. How long? Kale asked. Initial infiltration complete in 12 seconds. Full system override in progress. A pause. Then. They don't know we're inside yet. Kale nodded. Good. Across Zarithi space. Everything still looked normal. Ships moved. Commands were issued. Fleets repositioned. And then. It began. A fleet commander attempted to send a formation update. The system accepted the command. Confirmed it. Displayed it. And transmitted something else entirely. Ships veered off course. Not drastically. Not immediately noticeable. Just, wrong enough. Correct that vector. It is correct. No, it isn't. Check again. I already did. Confusion. Small. Contained. Then communications started failing. Not breaking. Corrupting. Orders arrived incomplete. Coordinates shifted by fractions. Timing desynchronized. Who authorized this maneuver? No one. Then why are we moving? Across dozens of fleets. The same problem. The same question. And then. The screens began to change. At first. It was just a flicker. A distortion. A delay. Then. Messages appeared. Unrequested. Untranslate. Unavoidable. You are out of position. Zarithi operators froze. What is that? Source unknown. Trace it. Trying. The message changed. You are outmatched. Panic started to creep in. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. Because systems were no longer responding. They were responding incorrectly. Weapons failed to lock. Shields activated too late. Navigation systems contradicted themselves. And then. The real damage began. Command access denied. What do you mean denied? I am command. System does not recognize your authority. That's impossible. Across Zarithi command networks, access was being revoked. Not destroyed. Rewritten. They've replaced our command protocols. No. A pause. Worse realization. They've become our command protocols. The AI didn't attack like a weapon. It didn't crash systems. Didn't overload circuits. It took control. Human artificial intelligence. Restricted for 50 years. Now moved freely through Zarithi networks. It learned. Adapted. Optimized. Within hours. Entire fleets were operating on false data. Chasing targets that didn't exist. Avoiding threats that weren't there. Engaging allies mistaken for enemies. This is impossible. No, this is. No one finished that sentence. Because no one wanted to say it. This was war. Real war. On the bridge of the invisible hand. Kale watched it unfold in silence. Green markers spread across the tactical display. Each one representing control. Not destruction. Control. Status. Enemy coordination degraded by 63%. Communications. Fragmented. Inconsistent. Mostly unreliable. Fleet cohesion. Collapsing. Kale folded his hands behind his back. Continue. 6 hours later. The Zarithi military no longer functioned as a unified force. They still had ships. Still had weapons. Still had numbers. But they no longer had coordination. And without coordination, numbers meant nothing. Across the galaxy, the reaction shifted again. This wasn't shock anymore. This wasn't outrage. This was fear. They're not just destroying fleets. They're dismantling them. They're not fighting battles. They're ending wars. In the Galactic Council, the chamber had lost all sense of order. Delegates shouted over one another. Demands. Accusations. Panic. This must stop immediately. They are violating every principle. They are demonstrating capabilities we cannot counter. That was the truth no one wanted. A crystalline delegate pulsed violently with color. This is exactly why such technologies were banned. From the upper tiers, the Archon finally spoke. They were not banned, it said calmly. The chamber froze. They were abandoned. Every eye turned toward it. Because you were afraid of them, the Archon continued. Because you chose safety over understanding. A pause. Humanity did not. Silence followed. Heavy. Uncomfortable. They told you, the Archon said. They warned you. Its energy form flickered, something close to irritation. You chose not to listen. Back in Zarithi space. The situation had become catastrophic. Admiral Virex stood on the bridge of his flagship. Systems failing around him. Officers shouting conflicting reports. We can't coordinate fleets. Communications are compromised. We're receiving false telemetry. Then shut it down. We can't. He slammed a clawed hand into the console. Find them. But there was nothing to find. Because the enemy wasn't in front of them. It was everywhere. And then, the final realization hit. They're not attacking our ships. One officer whispered. They're attacking our ability to fight. Virex froze. Because that changed everything. This wasn't war as they understood it. This wasn't engagement. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't fair. And that was the problem. Because war was never supposed to be fair. On Earth, President Solis watched the reports in silence. They're collapsing faster than projected, an advisor said. Resistance. Minimal. Disorganized. Solis nodded once. Good. No satisfaction. No pride. Just inevitability. Prepare phase escalation. The room went quiet. Because everyone knew what that meant. What came next wasn't just domination. It was demonstration. A message. Not just to the Zarithi, but to the entire galaxy. And this time, no one would misunderstand it. Across the stars, the same phrase began appearing again. Not spoken, not broadcast, but understood. We warned you. And now, the galaxy was finally listening. By the third day, the war was already over. The Zarithi just didn't know it yet. Their fleets still existed. Their ships still moved. Their weapons still fired. But none of it mattered anymore. Because war is not decided by who still has guns. It's decided by who still has control. And the Zarithi had lost that hours ago. Primary command network is gone. Fallback systems compromised. Manual coordination impossible at scale. Admiral Virex stood motionless as the reports stacked on top of each other. Each one worse than the last. Each one confirming the same truth. They were no longer fighting a war. They were reacting to one. Then we consolidate, he said. His voice was steady, but thinner now. Strained. We regroup. We fortify. We force them into direct engagement. That was the only option left. Force the enemy into a fight they understood. But humanity wasn't interested in fighting a war the Zarithi understood. Across Zarithi territory, human forces changed tactics. The strikes slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. And that was worse. Because destruction creates panic. But anticipation creates fear. Military installations remained intact. For now, fleet remnants drifted in scattered formations. Waiting. Commanders sat in crippled war rooms. Watching systems they could no longer trust. And then, the message arrived. Not as a transmission. Not through communication channels. It appeared everywhere at once. On screens. On interfaces. On systems that were supposed to be offline. We see you. The entire Zarithi network froze. What is that? How are they? Shut it down. We can't. The message shifted. We know where you are. Across command centers. Across bunkers. Across hidden installations. The same words. And then, coordinates appeared. Precise. Accurate. Locations of command hubs. Weapon depots. Fleet rally points. Hidden bunkers. Nothing was missed. Nothing was wrong. They shouldn't have access to this. They don't. A pause. A realization. They mapped everything. Not during the war. Before it. For decades. On the bridge of the invisible hand. Admiral Kale Oris watched the projections update in real time. Target mapping complete. Verification. Confirmed across all sectors. Kale nodded slowly. They spent centuries building defenses, one officer said quietly. And we spent 50 years learning how to break them. Then came the broadcast. This time. Human. It appeared over every Zarithi world. Projected into the sky. Forced onto every functioning system. Impossible to ignore. A woman stood at the center of the image. Not a soldier. Not a politician. A scientist. Dr. Elia Ma. Specialist in cognitive warfare. Her voice was calm. Measured. Almost gentle. People of the Zarithi Dominion, she began. No hostility. No anger. Just clarity. Your military leadership has not been honest with you. Across cities. Across populations. Millions watched. They are no longer in control of this conflict. A pause. Letting that settle. They know this. Behind her. The display shifted. Real-time tracking. Every remaining Zarithi military asset. Highlighted. Marked. We are currently monitoring all active military installations within your territory. No exaggeration. No threat. Just fact. We know where your commanders are located. Zoom. Specific bunkers. Specific facilities. We know where your fleets are positioned. Zoom. Ships. Coordinates. Movement paths. And we know. A slight pause. How to destroy them. The silence that followed spread across an entire species. Not panic. Not yet. Something worse. Understanding. We are going to demonstrate this. The display changed again. A celestial body appeared. A small moon. Uninhabited. Used for military exercises. In 4 hours, Dr. Ma continued, we will destroy this object. A ripple of disbelief. We will do so using weapons your military has assured you do not exist. Her expression didn't change. After this demonstration. A pause. Your leadership will have 1 hour. The words slowed. Deliberate. 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. The display zoomed again. Back to the targets. If they refuse. Silence stretched. We will remove every military asset on your worlds. Another pause. We will not target civilians. That mattered. We will not destroy your cities. That mattered more. But we will leave you. Her voice remained calm. Unable to defend yourselves. And that was the true threat. Not death. Powerlessness. The broadcast ended. But the countdown remained. Projected in the sky. Visible from every city. Every world. 4 hours. Across Zarithi space. The reaction was immediate. Military leaders demanded action. Civilians demanded answers. Command systems failed to respond. They're bluffing. They can't. They already. No one finished that sentence. Because they had already seen what humanity could do. In the Galactic Council. The chamber had gone completely silent. No arguments. No debates. Just watching. They're going to destroy a moon, one delegate whispered. They're proving they can destroy anything. The Archon's voice returned. You still believe this is about the Zarithi? No one answered. Because now, they understood. This wasn't punishment. This was education. On Zarithi Prime. The High Command gathered. Fractured. Panicked. Cornered. We cannot allow this demonstration. We cannot stop it. Then we surrender. We do not surrender. The argument spiraled. Because pride and survival rarely agree. Above the system. Hidden beyond detection. Human vessels adjusted position. Final calculations locked. Time to impact. 4 hours. Synchronized. Kale stood still. Watching the countdown. This wasn't about victory anymore. That had already been decided. This was about making sure no one ever forgot. Across the galaxy, the timer ticked down. And for the first time, every species watching felt the same thing. Not anger. Not outrage. Fear. Because now, they understood exactly what humanity had meant. We are holding back. And in less than 4 hours, they were about to see what that really looked like. The countdown reached 0. And the galaxy held its breath. There was no build-up. No charging glow. No visible weapon. Just 3 human ships drifting in silent orbit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, they fired. No flash. No beam. No energy signature that any known sensor could track. Just a distortion. A brief, almost invisible warping of space. And then impact. The moon didn't explode. It split. Clean. Precise. Impossible. A fracture line carved through its core in perfect symmetry. Followed by a delayed, violent separation as internal pressure tore the 2 halves apart. For a few seconds, the pieces drifted in eerie silence. Then gravity lost its argument. And the moon came apart. Fragments scattered across orbit. Debris fields expanded. Shockwaves rippled through surrounding space. On Zarithi Prime, the night sky changed forever. Where once there had been a single, unbroken sphere, there were now 2 shattered halves, drifting slowly apart. Every city saw it. Every citizen watched. And in that moment, denial died. Across the galaxy, no one spoke. Not in the council. Not in command centers. Not in the fleets still pretending they had a chance. Because this wasn't a battle. This was proof. They split it. The words came from somewhere in the chamber. No one knew who said it. They split a moon. And everyone understood what that meant. If they could do that, nothing was safe. On the bridge of the invisible hand, Admiral Cale Oris didn't react. Confirmation. Target destroyed. Structural integrity 0. Debris dispersion within projected parameters. Civilian impact. None. Cale nodded once. Begin final phase. On Zarithi Prime, the High Command chamber had gone silent. Not arguing anymore. Not debating. Just staring at the sky. At what used to be certainty. At what used to be power. They weren't bluffing. No one answered. Because there was nothing left to argue. One of the senior commanders spoke, quietly now. We surrender. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Another tried to protest. Stopped halfway through. Because pride doesn't survive that kind of reality. The transmission request was sent immediately. Not delayed. Not negotiated. Begging. And humanity answered. Admiral Cale Oris appeared on every screen across Zarithi space. No dramatic entrance. No theatrical framing. Just a man. Standing in a command room. Calm. Still. Certain. You wish to surrender, he said. Not a question. A statement. The Zarithi High Speaker lowered his head. We acknowledge total strategic defeat. The words tasted like ash. We request immediate ceasefire. A pause. We accept your terms. Cale studied him. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just. Assessment. Your surrender is accepted. The room froze. Because they expected more. Threats. Punishment. Revenge. Instead, they got clarity. All military operations will cease immediately, Cale continued. Every vessel. Every installation. Every command structure. The terms came one by one. Precise. Unavoidable. You will submit full disclosure of all military assets. You will dismantle all prohibited operations. You will release all detained populations under your control. That one hit harder than the rest. Because now, the truth would come out. And Cale knew it. We know what you've been hiding, he said quietly. The High Speaker flinched. We know where they are. No denial came. Because there was no point. You will comply. A final pause. And those responsible for the execution of human prisoners. Cale's voice didn't change. Will be transferred for trial. The silence that followed was absolute. Because now, this wasn't just defeat. It was consequence. The surrender was signed within the hour. Across the galaxy, the reaction spread like shockwaves. A major military power collapsed in less than a week. Not defeated. Dismantled. They didn't fight a war. They ended one. On Earth, the command centers didn't celebrate. There were no cheers. No victory speeches. Just quiet acknowledgement. Because this wasn't the end. This was the message. President Solis appeared once more. No delay. No build-up. Some of you called our actions barbaric, he said calmly. The galaxy listened. Because now, they had no choice. You said we fought without honor. A slight pause. You were right. That line landed harder than anything before it. Because honor does not win wars. Silence. Understanding does. The display behind him shifted, showing the 6 executed soldiers. They died following your rules. Another shift. Zarithi military assets collapsing. We fight to make sure no one else has to. He stepped closer. This is what we meant when we said we were holding back. A pause. This is what happens. The words slowed. Final. When we stop. The broadcast ended. And for the first time, in every corner of the galaxy, no one argued. No one mocked. No one dismissed. Because now, they knew. Humanity hadn't been exaggerating. Hadn't been bluffing. Hadn't been warning them out of fear. They had been warning them. Out of restraint. And that restraint was gone. But something else had changed too. Because in the silence that followed, a question began to spread. Quiet. Unspoken. If humanity could do this, what else were they holding back? And somewhere, deep in the oldest layers of the Galactic Council, ancient systems began to unlock. Because there were some species, very old species, who remembered. And they knew. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Silence spread faster than any signal. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of certainty. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had believed something fundamental. That war could be controlled. That violence could be regulated. That power, once restricted, would stay that way. Humanity had just shattered that belief. And now, no one knew what came next. The Galactic Council convened in full emergency session. Every seat occupied. Every channel open. Every species watching. But this time, no one spoke first. Because there was nothing left to argue. They dismantled a Tier 4 military power in 6 days. The statement came from a senior analyst. Flat. Unemotional. They did it without full mobilization. Another voice added. They did it while limiting collateral damage. A third. Quieter. More dangerous. They did it, precisely. That word echoed. Not chaotic. Not reckless. Precise. Which meant, it wasn't rage. It was control. They violated every convention, a delegate finally said. Weak. Almost desperate. They violated assumptions, another corrected. The chamber shifted. Because that was harder to ignore. They cannot be allowed to operate outside the system. A murmur followed. Agreement. Fear disguised as principle. Then enforce it. Silence again. Because enforcement required power. And for the first time, no one was sure they had enough. From the upper tiers, the Archon rose. For centuries, they had observed. Rarely speaking. Never intervening. Now, they moved. Their form shimmered into full visibility. Energy contained within crystalline structure. Ancient. Measured. When they spoke, the chamber didn't interrupt. You misunderstand what has occurred. No accusation. No anger. Just correction. This is not escalation. A pause. This is revelation. Every delegate focused now. Every system recording. You believe humanity has changed. A slight flicker. They have not. The words landed heavier than anything before them. They have always been this. Silence deepened. You simply chose not to see it. The Archon extended a limb. And the chamber darkened. Holographic displays activated. Old. Sealed. Forgotten. Footage filled the air. Planets burning. Cities erased in seconds. Shockwaves tearing across continents. Human wars. Not space battles. Not controlled engagements. Real war. Before we found them, the Archon said. This is what they were. Images shifted. Trenches filled with gas. Bombers turning cities into firestorms. Missiles crossing entire worlds in minutes. They had no conventions. Another shift. Nuclear detonations. Blinding light. Total destruction. They had no limits. The chamber watched in stunned silence. Because this wasn't theoretical. This was history. When we encountered humanity. The Archon continued. We did not fear their technology. A pause. We feared their understanding of war. That line cut deeper than anything else. They had already learned what most species never do. The display slowed. Focused. They had learned how to win. They agreed to our conventions, the Archon said. Not demanded. Agreed. Not because they were forced. Another pause. Because they chose to become something else. The chamber remained frozen. We gave them the stars. Images shifted again. First contact. Human ships. Archon vessels. They gave us restraint. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. And you. The Archon's form flickered slightly. For the first time, something like irritation surfaced. Mistook that restraint for weakness. Zarithi representatives remained silent. Broken. Irrelevant now. The rest of the council. Uneasy. Because this wasn't just about one war. This was about everything they believed. The conventions were never designed to limit humanity. The Archon continued. A pause. They were designed to protect you from them. That line changed everything. You could feel it. Across the chamber. Across the galaxy. The shift. They warned you. A repetition. But now. It meant something different. They told you what they were capable of. They told you they were holding back. And you. A final pause. Forced them to prove it. No one spoke. Because no one could argue. They will not return to what they were. The Archon said quietly. They will become something else. Not conquerors. Not destroyers. Something worse. Something that remembers both restraint. A pause. And what happens when it is removed? Across the galaxy. The message spread. Not as fear. As realization. Humanity hadn't changed. The galaxy had simply misunderstood them. In quiet corners of space. Decisions were made. Fleets stood down. Territorial disputes dissolved. Old conflicts. Suddenly felt irrelevant. Because none of them mattered anymore. Not compared to this. And yet. The Archon wasn't finished. There is more. That line froze the chamber again. Because if this wasn't the worst of it. Then what was? The display changed. Not history this time. Something else. Something distant. A sensor reading. Faint. Massive. Moving. We detected this 3 cycles ago. The image sharpened. A formation. Too large. Too structured. Too intentional. An extragalactic force. Silence turned into something heavier. Fear. They are not part of this galaxy. They are not bound by your conventions. They do not negotiate. The Archon's voice lowered. They do not stop. The scale adjusted. Numbers appeared. Estimated size. Estimated velocity. Estimated arrival. And the final line. That changed everything again. Time to contact. A pause. Less than 1 century. The chamber broke. Not into arguments. Into panic. Because now. Everything made sense. Why the Archons had allowed humanity in. Why they had tolerated their nature. Why they had insisted on restraint. But never forced disarmament. Because one day. The galaxy would need them. And now. That day was coming. The Archon looked across the chamber one last time. You have spent 3,000 years forgetting war. A pause. They have spent 50 years remembering it. Silence. Heavy. Final. And in that silence, a truth settled across the entire galaxy. Humanity wasn't the problem. They were the answer. But the real question was, would the galaxy accept that? Before it was too late. The silence after the revelation didn't break. It shifted. Fear became urgency. Urgency became calculation. Because for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy wasn't preparing for war with itself. It was preparing for something worse. Something that didn't care about rules. The Galactic Council did not debate. Not this time. They couldn't afford to. Verification. The question came automatically. Instinct. Denial disguised as procedure. The Archon responded without hesitation. Independent confirmation is already available. Within minutes, dozens of species ran their own scans. Deep space arrays activated. Long-range telescopes recalibrated. Ancient sensor systems, unused for centuries, brought back online. And one by one, the confirmations came in. It's real. The formation sharpened. A fleet. Not thousands. Not millions. Something far beyond that. And moving. With purpose. They're not exploring. They're not passing through. They're coming here. The realization spread across every system. Every world. Every species. This wasn't a potential threat. This was inevitable. They will arrive in under 1 century. For many species, that was generations. For others, barely enough time to adapt. For all, it was not enough. They will not follow conventions. That line mattered most. Because everything the galaxy knew, every rule, every system, every assumption, would fail. They will not negotiate. That removed diplomacy. They will not surrender. That removed strategy. They will not stop. That removed hope. The chamber fell into chaos. Not arguments. Planning. We need a unified fleet. We need weapons expansion. We need defensive grids. We need. No. The word cut through everything. Calm. Controlled. Unavoidable. Ambassador Ilara Vance stepped forward. For the first time since the war, humanity stood at the center of the chamber. And no one laughed. No one interrupted. No one dismissed her. You need more than that, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You need to understand something. A pause. This isn't your kind of war. Silence returned. You cannot win this with formations. Another pause. You cannot win this with declarations. And then, the line that changed everything again. You cannot win this. She looked across the chamber. Without becoming something you chose to forget. No one argued. Because now, they understood. The Thynax arbiter spoke carefully. You are suggesting. I'm stating, Ilara interrupted calmly. You need to relearn how to fight. The words echoed. Not as threat. As reality. The Corvian delegate, once one of the loudest voices against humanity, stood slowly. You're asking us to abandon everything that has maintained peace for millennia. Ilara shook her head slightly. No. A pause. I'm telling you it won't survive what's coming. That was the moment. The turning point. Where the galaxy stopped asking if. And started asking how. What are you proposing? The arbiter asked. Ilara didn't hesitate. Humanity leads. The chamber froze. Not in rejection. In recognition. We have the experience. We have the technology. We have the doctrine. A final pause. And we never forgot what war actually is. Silence stretched. Because this wasn't a request. It was the only viable option. We will train your forces. We will share what you abandoned. We will prepare this galaxy. Her voice lowered slightly. For total war. The phrase landed hard. Total war. A concept most species only knew from archived theory. Something distant. Something primitive. Something human. And in return? The arbiter asked. Ilara's gaze didn't shift. Unity. A beat. Resources. Another. And commitment. No half measures. No hesitation. Because this wasn't survival of species anymore. This was survival of everything. The vote came faster than any in recorded history. No long debates. No political maneuvering. Just decision. 68 species voted in favor. 4 against. 2 abstained. It didn't matter. It was enough. The motion passes. The arbiter's voice carried across the chamber. Humanity is granted command authority over galactic military reform. A pause. The Galactic Defense Initiative is hereby established. And just like that, everything changed. Across the galaxy. Shipyards activated. Factories expanded. Old weapons designs recovered. Forbidden technologies. Reconsidered. Human training facilities opened across dozens of systems. Military personnel from hundreds of species arrived. And what they learned shattered everything they thought they knew. War is not about honor. A human instructor stood before a mixed group of alien cadets. It's not about fairness. It's not about looking civilized. A pause. It's about winning. Some resisted. Some struggled. Some refused entirely. But most adapted. Because they had seen what happened if they didn't. On Earth. Deep beneath Geneva. Vaults opened. Seals that had not moved in 50 years. Unlocked. Inside. Weapons the galaxy had never seen. Never imagined. Never wanted to. Kinetic arsenals. Antimatter payloads. Autonomous drone swarms. Quantum displacement systems. All of it. Prepared. Not for conquest. For survival. Admiral Cale Oris stood in a newly designated command center. The title above his station had changed. Commander, Galactic Defense Initiative. Beside him, Ilara Vance. Both of them watched the same display. A countdown. 99 years. That's not enough time, one officer said quietly. Cale didn't look away. It has to be. Because there was no alternative. Across the stars. The galaxy transformed. Slower than needed. Faster than expected. And at the center of it all, humanity stood. Not as conquerors. Not as rulers. But as something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never truly had before. Teachers. Warriors. Guardians. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of known space, the approaching fleet continued its slow, unstoppable advance. Unaware that the galaxy they were coming for was no longer the one they expected. 99 years passed faster than anyone expected. Not because time moved differently, but because everything else did. The galaxy didn't become stronger overnight. It didn't become fearless. It didn't become perfect. But it changed. Slowly at first. Then completely. Worlds that had never built weapons now forged them without hesitation. Species that once debated ethics of combat now studied survival. Fleets that once moved in ceremonial formations now trained for chaos. And at the center of it all, humanity taught them not just how to fight, but when. 50 years in, the first generation grew up knowing only one truth. War was coming. 75 years. The first deep space signals were decoded. The name they gave themselves. Translated imperfectly. The harvesters. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They consumed. Entire civilizations reduced to raw material. Planets dismantled. Stars harvested. Galaxies emptied. And now, they were here. The countdown reached zero. At the edge of the Milky Way. Sensors across hundreds of systems activated simultaneously. And for the first time, the galaxy saw them clearly. 5 million ships. Not organized. Not elegant. Relentless. Endless. Advancing like a storm that had already destroyed everything behind it. They're not slowing down. They're not changing formation. They're not even acknowledging us. Because to them, the galaxy wasn't an enemy. It was a resource. And then, the response was sent. Not by one species. By all of them. A unified transmission. Carried across the void. We are the Milky Way galactic community. A pause. We do not surrender. Another. We do not negotiate. Final. We fight. The war began. 17 light-years from the galactic rim. The harvesters struck first. Overwhelming force. No hesitation. No concern for losses. Exactly as expected. But what they didn't expect was resistance. The first engagement lasted 6 months. Not hours. Not days. 6 months. Because for the first time in their existence, the harvesters faced something unfamiliar. Opposition that didn't break. Fleets that didn't retreat when outnumbered. Enemies that didn't follow predictable patterns. Human-designed tactics spread across every allied fleet. Kill zones. Ambush vectors. Sacrificial positioning. Ships were no longer treated as symbols of power. They were tools. Resources. Expendable. If it meant winning. Losses were catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands of ships destroyed. Millions of lives lost. But the line held. They stopped them. The word spread slowly. Unbelievably. They actually stopped them. For the first time. In a million years. The harvesters didn't advance. On the human flagship Vindication, Commander Torres stood at the center of the bridge. She wasn't smiling. No one was. Because stopping them was only the beginning. Send it, she said. A message transmitted across enemy frequencies. Clear. Direct. You are facing a galaxy that remembers war. A pause. You expected prey. Another. You found predators. The war lasted 15 years. 15 years of constant conflict. System by system. World by world. The galaxy burned. But it didn't fall. Because this time, it wasn't fighting to survive. It was fighting to win. And at the center of every strategy, every breakthrough, every turning point, was the same lesson humanity had tried to teach from the beginning. War is not about being civilized. It's about surviving long enough to remain one. In the final battle, the harvesters broke. Not completely, not instantly, but enough. Their advance stopped, then reversed. And slowly, relentlessly, they were pushed back into the void they came from. The cost was beyond measure. Entire systems gone. Billions lost. But the galaxy still existed. Years later, historians would study the war. They would analyze the tactics, the technologies, the decisions. But all of them, every single one, would come to the same conclusion. The war wasn't won by strength. It was won by understanding. Understanding what war really is. Understanding when restraint matters. And when it doesn't. Understanding that sometimes, the only way to protect everything you value is to become something capable of destroying anything that threatens it. On Earth, at a memorial built on the restored world of Ardent 3, 6 names were engraved into stone. The first casualties. The moment everything changed. Below them, a single line. They died following rules. A pause. We lived because we learned when to break them. And above that world, human ships stood watch. Not as conquerors. Not as rulers. But as guardians. Because in the end, that was what humanity had truly been holding back. Not just weapons. Not just power. But responsibility. And now, the galaxy understood. They hadn't been warning them about destruction. They had been warning them about what it takes to protect everything. Far beyond the stars, the remnants of the harvesters retreated into the dark. And for the first time, they carried something new with them. Not data, not resources, but a message, a warning. There is a galaxy that remembers how to fight. And at its center, a species that once nearly destroyed itself, learned how to become its protector.